Good morning. It's Wednesday, December 11th. I'm Diane Sare, president of the LaRouche organization, and Harley will be back with you tomorrow. He is preparing for the webcast today at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time with Helga Zepp LaRouche. So, as I'm sure all of you are aware, over the weekend, the Schiller Institute had an incredible conference, and I would urge everyone to take the time to watch each and every panel starting from Saturday, December 7th. It started at 9 a.m. You can now watch it at any time, but there was remarkable dialogue between Helga Zepp LaRouche, Dmitry Trenin of Russia, Zhang Weiwei, an economist from China, the former president of Guyana, the former prime minister of Slovakia. Extremely important dialogue. And then that was followed in the afternoon by a discussion of the development projects outlined in the new Schiller Institute pamphlet, which will be linked below. On Sunday morning, there was another strategic discussion on energy and science, which also featured a dialogue between Helga Zepp LaRouche and the former South African Foreign Minister, Naledi Pandor, which I won't describe. You should listen for yourself. And then the fourth panel, in which both Harley Schlanger and I participated on the question of culture with Helga Zepp LaRouche, John Segerson, director of the Schiller Institute NYC Chorus, Bill Ferguson, known as the Bard of Boston, and Nader Majd, the president and founder of the Persian Cultural Association in Virginia. And I have a surprise related to that panel at the end of this briefing. So obviously, we're in an extremely intense situation. And one of the things going on that same weekend were events by Scott Ritter, former UN weapons inspector, who, like Helga Zepp LaRouche, had commented on the fact that Rear Admiral Buchanan of the Strategic Command in the United States had made completely bizarre comments that while a nuclear war can never be won and therefore should never be fought, if we have a nuclear war, we want to win, right? Now, this is insanity. We cannot act and prepare for an unwinnable nuclear war and act as if it's winnable, but that is precisely what he is doing. And it turns out there's legislation, which is HR 10218. House Resolution 10218, which was introduced by Representative Higgins of Louisiana, it's only 2 pages. It's very straightforward. It calls for the U.S. to take all of our ATACMS, our long-range missiles, back from Ukraine and not to send them anymore. And people will be mobilizing on the Hill to get this through. There will be a leaflet posted on the LaRouche organization website. I would urge people to print out this leaflet, call your congressman, tell them they have to support House Resolution 10218 now. And the backside of the leaflet has some of the relevant quotes from Rear Admiral Buchanan, so that if the congressman doesn't believe that there are people crazy enough to be talking about nuclear war, you have the ammunition. Now, Putin today or yesterday, when he was addressing the Council for the Development of Civil Society and Human Rights, said that with the development of the Orezhnik hypersonic missile, we have the potential to supersede nuclear weapons. He said we don't need to rely upon nuclear weapons. This missile right now, in case you haven't been following, travels at a speed of Mach 10. There is no Western defensive system that can stop it from hitting its target. And because it travels at this high speed of about 2 miles per second, it has an enormous force upon impact, which means you can be pretty destructive also, depending what kind of payload you have in the missile, not nuclear. So you can avoid the radiation, but still have, especially if you launch a whole fleet of these things, an extremely high-powered destructive impact. So he said, quote, What we need now is not to improve the nuclear doctrine, but the Orezhnik, because if you look at it, a sufficient number of these modern systems simply puts us on the brink of virtually no need to use nuclear weapons, unquote. Now, otherwise, people should know that President Lukashenko of Belarus has announced that the nuclear weapons that Russia was going to place there have been placed there. He said, haha, in effect, you didn't notice, but I can tell you we have them, and we have more than a dozen of them. And if we are attacked, we will respond. So that is obviously important to know. And then the SVR, which is the equivalent of the Russian Foreign Intelligence or CIA, Chief Sergei Naryshkin gave an interview to a magazine called Razvedchik or Scout, in which he made the following points. The West is ready to go to great lengths to maintain its dominance and may try to provoke a global conflict with its epicenter in Eurasia. One of the possible scenarios of the development events is in the medium term is a potential Western attempt to provoke a global armed conflict. But he said, there are groups of countries who have emerged in the world who are more responsible. And if these countries are united, he said, we are capable of countering the Anglo-Saxon influence and solving all of our problems without escalating to World War III. That's true. Russia, China, India, Iran. These nations are large, Brazil, South Africa, and the new partners of the BRICS, which include many other nations, Indonesia, Nigeria, Ethiopia, etc. They have among them now over 50% of the world's population, over 70% of the world's wheat production. This, among other reasons, is why it was so foolish for Donald Trump to threaten to impose 100% tariffs on countries that go against the dollar. They don't need us. We need them. They have the vast majority of the world's commodities right now, not us. We have to realize that. So he said everything the West tries to do is going to backfire. We're supposedly making Russia weaker, but we are becoming weaker. And the Soviet, or I should say Russian leadership said, look at what happened to the Soviet Union. We learned this lesson. We had leadership that was more interested in being hegemonic and playing a role outside of our country. They neglected their domestic affairs and the system collapsed. Look at the West. Do we have leadership that is ignoring the plight of the American people? Yes, we do. That means that leadership is not likely to last long. Now, of course, the big news is that the Assad government has fallen. This is very dangerous. It is very devastating. The effect of the Caesar sanctions on Syria created a much weaker situation than I think anybody expected. And I would ask people, besides trying to figure out what happened and who made deals with whom, obviously Bibi Netanyahu was running around crowing about his great victory. Syria, Iraq, these were stable, prosperous nations with very high literacy rates, with a high standard of living, with a lot of engineers and doctors, and a multitude of different religious groups. They were secular states. Thanks to the military attacks by depraved, evil lunatics running the United States, guided by a British imperial mission, this is a disaster. And they are also producing millions of refugees for whom we cannot care because we have been collapsing our own economy here in the United States and in Europe. It's disgusting. The policy has to change. And on that, I will just say that the UN Relief Works Agency has warned that there are 945,000 Palestinians in Gaza. That's more than half probably of the people remaining there are at risk of exposure, that is freezing to death because of harsh winter conditions now, rain, cold temperatures, no housing, no food, no water. And this is the result of a willful and deliberate policy. You may remember Joe Biden said that if they didn't start letting aid in within 30 days, the US would force the aid or something. We did nothing. So now my closing thought comes from the cultural sphere, the domain of the fourth panel. It is something for every American leader to think about and every American to think about. It's a poetic principle, and we should not allow our nation to go to this place. Ozymandias by Percy Shelley. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away.